nothing is really forever timeless. It's just the adapting to the change and not waiting for that perfect moment. You can take that leap now. You can really try things. This is your business and don't be afraid to start it.
Welcome to An Entrepreneur's Vibes, the podcast that gives insight into the minds of visionary entrepreneurs and business leaders. Brought to you by The Right Direction, a leading professional and technical writing company based in North America. Each episode, we explore stories and experiences of those who dared to dream, took the leap, and built their own empires. Join us in uncovering the secrets to success and lessons learned along the way. So if you're just starting your entrepreneurial journey or you're already a seasoned business pro, you'll find inspiration, knowledge, and good vibes right here. To kickstart our first episode after a long hiatus, we have a very special guest. Our guest for today's episode has been a tech whiz from a very young age and has built a successful business inspired by a website building challenge that he was given at age 15. He has since founded a boutique digital agency and is the creative director of the company WebSharx. Vibing with us today all the way from Toronto, Canada, Mr. Baljot Saral.
Hi, Patricia. Thank you for having me.
So how are you today? What are the vibes like?
Oh, yeah, the vibes are great. I'm definitely excited to kind of share my story and inspire other people out there as well. And there's definitely a lot going on in today's business world, and we're in one industry, but we touch many. So for sure, excited to share my stories.
Thank you. We know entrepreneurs are very busy, and we really just want to thank you for your time today. So to introduce you more to our viewers, would you tell us a little about yourself and your background?
Perfect. Yeah, no problem. So, in terms of my background, in terms of kind of where I've started in high school, I took a lot of interest in communication technology and just overall software and kind of just design, things like that. So that's where a lot of my background stems from. But I went to school, university actually, and got my bachelor's degree at the Schulich School of Business. So I specialized in marketing, and a lot of that history helped me really combine my experience in technology and combine that with marketing. So that really helped lead me to better managing my business till today. And yeah, I think overall, in terms of Schulich School of Business, definitely taught a lot in terms of like entrepreneurship or just business management, things that I didn't really think about that you don't really learn on Google, things like that. So I think that was great. And then, of course, I continued in terms of obviously designing and developing over that time.
So you know what? I think a lot of like, especially the younger people out there, with all of these like readily available information, especially online with like how to run a business and how to, start an entrepreneurship, they really want
Yeah.
to know if it's like even relevant to even take a business course or like to even go to college. What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, for sure. That's a great question. I think it can be valid. There's a lot of like stories you hear about like dropouts that start businesses and even like huge tech startups. I think it honestly depends by person. I think based on what suits them best, and helps them excel that much faster, I would recommend that path. If certain people feel like school might hold them back, I wouldn't put like a guardrail saying it's like a prerequisite for starting a business. But for sure, I think there are certain nuggets that I took away from school and throughout those years that really helped kind of shape me to be a better business leader. And I think that's kind of those are some of those soft skills and also hard skills as well, that you also learn about that I did take away. And especially with school, I think there's a lot of like stuff aside from just like books and learning there. It's also just the experiences you have with like certain clubs or memberships you're a part of. And I think those associations, it really helps you understand different perspectives, meeting all different types of people. And that really, I think, helps you kind of tackle the real world once you leave from like your bachelor degree or any university
I totally
or
agree.
college. Yeah,
Absolutely, because
yeah,
there's just social skills that you just don't get if you're like, especially during the pandemic when everyone was just doing online school. I feel like so many people missed out on,
yeah,
the things you learn from other people, not just like from your educators or, what you learn in courses. So I think that's really important. Appreciate that. But when you were
yeah.
a kid, did you always know that you wanted to run your own business, or was this something you learned along the way and maybe you had like a dream job that you wanted to pursue when you were younger?
Yeah, of course, no problem. So, yeah, it's honestly tough, like deciding on careers. I speak with like younger people at times, and like I always tell them like and give advice like, okay, you don't need to rush. Like you really don't. You kind of need to know a little bit going into university, and then you can kind of elaborate from there. But as a kid, in terms of my experience, I never thought I'd really own a business. I come from a family of entrepreneurship in general, and a lot of people around me own businesses at the time. But overall, I thought about the kind of standard career path, which is nothing wrong with it. But in terms of like going to school and then getting a great job at a university, things like that, and that's what I thought about. And throughout high school, growing up, over time, I acknowledged that I had a lot of emotional intelligence, and that really led me to thinking about certain careers like in psychology or things like that, and kind of thought about that for a year or two, and then I just went into kind of what I thrived in, and that was more around kind of math and business subjects. So that really led me to really think, okay, let's go more kind of like the business route. And that took me to kind of Schulich for school. And then, but overall, in terms of my overall experience, like growing up, I have always been into technology and kind of computers, things like that. Like I loved even reformatting computers and just making sure they're up and running well, etc., stuff like that. And I always had a design eye in terms of like understanding like certain concepts, or just had a really keen eye for that. Not to say it was great at that time. Like I was tasked with building my first website from my uncle because he knew I was into technology a lot, and that's just something I self-learned. And the website at the time, it was really bad. Like when I developed it, it's like because I was very from scratch, first time even doing it and learning it, using things like Photoshop and online tools. But overall, that was, I think, a really great learning experience. It helped me understand like what the capabilities are, and really I think it's just a self-learning. So just going back to your point around kind of school, there's a lot, like even just aside from school, that you can obviously learn. There's a lot of online courses, things like that, where that can be benefited from. So yeah.
I think it's a really huge factor listening and also like being aware of your own self talents. Like you've always been like keen into like technology. You said it yourself. So you kind of just like
Mhm.
found your way towards it without really even like maybe trying at first. Like it was something maybe that started as a
Yeah.
hobby and then you just realize that that's what you really wanted to get into. Do you think like it's a factor, like luck is a factor in like building a business? Cause like I feel like some people maybe find their like niches really later in life and they don't really have maybe they're not allowed to like explore outside of like the norms of like just like going to school and then
Mhm.
getting a job and like they don't have that, you know, or they don't have that support. So do you think that's a factor?
Yeah, for sure. I think that's a great point because I think luck for sure plays into it. It's like I didn't really think I'd go into like website development per se. I think it just came out of that just based on like what I was kind of tasked with at the time. But overall, I think in terms of like just overall understanding, like I think it's hard when anything's kind of like forced. Like if you force anything, like yes, I want to start a business for bed sheets or whatever it could
Mhm.
be. Like there's just so many things that come up nowadays. So I feel like the external environment really comes into play. Like people might think, okay, I should have started this business, or I should have done this food packaging company, or whatever it could be. I just think over time it evolves. Like for me, it just came out of a passion, and I think it's just what resonates well. But alongside that, I think it's just having the ability to kind of learn, and obviously learn to fail. It's just like it's also just learning by doing, and you'll see, okay, this is sticking well. This is turning out very well in terms of like a certain idea I've had, and this is getting some traction. And then I think that's where it kind of comes out, and it could really become something. Yeah.
That's like really good advice. Never be afraid to fail. You just gotta try and try until you like figure it out and like get that like winning, whatever works for you. So tell us about WebSharks. Like
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
when did you establish this and how long has this been your baby? How long did it like take to fruition?
Yeah, no problem. So in terms of WebSharks, it really started at a young age, just at around about kind of, I think I was about 15 years old or so. But um, overall, just thinking about that, it started from obviously kind of where I was tasked by my uncle to build a website, and I learned that on my own. But it honestly wasn't a great website, but it taught me a lot about kind of the ins and outs of about coding, about HTML, CSS, things like that, where I could learn about styling and how coding basically works, kind of the basics. So that really helped me kind of understand, okay, this could be a potential business for me, and a bit of a side hustle while I was in school and going towards university. And university here in Ontario, or at least Canada, can be very expensive. So I wanted to kind of lift that burden as much as possible for my parents, so where I could support myself. So I really just tried to accelerate with my business, and I started by advertising on classifieds like Kijiji, things like that. And that's where I kind of resonated well and got certain traction. And I remember at the time I couldn't even like drive to a business meeting. I had to ask my dad to drop me off and pick me back up just because I was too young at the time starting the business and obviously meeting that client. But I think those experiences helped me really become who I am today. And it's just having that go-getter attitude. It's just there's certain times of like where you don't have the exact fight every single day, and you just have to kind of dive into like those certain experiences where it really helps you excel and make the best out of all situations. Yeah.
That's really amazing. You just really went for it. And I think that's like a really amazing trait. And I
Yeah.
feel like that's something that really helped you become like the successful businessman you are today. Like online you see all these like really short reels or like TikToks of like being shown to kids of like what a successful day looks like for like a millionaire, or like what business people
Yeah,
do. Like you got to wake up at 5 in the morning, you got to do this, you got to do that. Like you got to utilize all 24 hours. So I wanted to ask you, like, what does a typical work day look
for
like for
sure.
you? Or how does a successful day start?
For sure, like to start the day, and probably not a good habit is I definitely start with looking at kind of any urgent emails to start the day to make sure if I need to prioritize something urgently, then I will earlier on in the day, and that's how I'll set my day accordingly. But overall, just in terms of my overall patterns, like I have a pet at home. His name's Louis, and I walk him every morning. And after that, I try to squeeze in a workout as well. And then I think that really covers kind of the activity part because a lot of work that we do is obviously on computers or phone calls, things like that, or meetings. And a lot of them are virtual now just because of the pandemic. But because of that, there's a lot of sitting and downtime. Not downtime, but really sitting and less activity. So try to be active as much as possible when the time's there. But in terms of overall general days, like we have certain project management tools like Trello, things like that, where we manage our day-to-day projects. So when I say we, I have a team of members in terms of website developers, graphic designers, and account executives and project management. So really that helps us understand, okay, these are certain items that came in for the day and that we might need to prioritize something because there could be an issue on a website or someone really wants to launch something by a certain time frame. So we prioritize those into kind of our project queue. But overall, it's really also managing our projects and making sure they're done efficiently. And aside from that, what we also do on a daily basis in terms of what I do is also making sure our clients' campaigns are running well. So I'll check in with our team to make sure they're running efficiently. And then, of course, we also have ongoing meetings and consultations. So really, that those are kind of the key areas of the day. It's really making sure we nail a couple of objectives, making sure our projects run efficiently, and then also that we're managing our marketing campaigns and that we're seeing some success. And if are some challenges, we definitely want to tackle them earlier on to make sure that we're really managing our campaigns effectively.
I really see the dedication because the first thing you said was like you check your emails as soon as you start your day. So I feel like that is like a really dedicated business person. But did you have any doubts along the way when you were starting WebSharks?
Yeah, for sure. So out of university, I graduated. I graduated, but then went into a full-time job at Johnson and Johnson. So that was in brand marketing. So basically, there's kind of a leap of faith that you take, right? And you kind of have a great source of income, a full-time job, and I basically decided to leave that after a couple of years. And in terms of doubts, like for sure, there's always doubts in the back of your mind in terms of am I making the right decision? But I think overall, in terms of like diving, in terms of like turning your business from like part time or a side hustle into a full time, people will know when that time comes. I think most of the time, it's just you build a certain clientele, and there's a certain, I guess, level your business has reached as well in terms of like where I was comfortable, and then I made that leap. But for sure, I think that's where it's on you as a person every day to make sure it's sustainable, and that's what I continue to try to do every day.
I feel like that's a challenge I always see from other people who are afraid of leaving their safety nets. Like if they do have like a regular job, or if they're in corporate, they don't want to leave those safety nets and start a business because it is very risky. Do you think like starting a business while you do have like a full-time job is like doable?
I think to a certain point, yes. And then it's just also about managing like your expectations around like timing. Like, yes, if you have a 9 to 5 job, and sometimes that could be like an 8 to 6 job or whatever it may be, because sometimes 8 hours just aren't enough.
Mhm.
I think for sure, like there's extra time you're going to need to put in. after work or before work. And that's, I think, as much time as you put in, that's where it helps your business thrive much more. And yeah, I think that's where it could help succeed much longer in the longer term.
Appreciate that. This is a really a bit of a far out question, but the name
Yeah, of
WebSharx is a
course.
really company name. How did you come up with that?
Oh yeah, for sure. Thank you. So it was basically my brother and cousin at the time, and we were just thinking about various names, and we all basically collaborated and thought about the name at the time. And I was just younger. I'm like, hey guys, like, what do you think? Like, what should I name my business? And like, we came with certain ideas. And my cousin, who played a lot in terms of wordplay, he was really good at that. Made suggestions, and we all kind of came up with something there. So it's honestly really helpful. And it's hard deciding on company names, and I think a lot of that nowadays is there's so many companies out there, just even versus like say kind of in 2010 or so, or even earlier than that, when WebSharx was founded, is there were less names and even domain names. So even when you're deciding on business names, now people will check for the website URL to make sure it's available, which is called the domain name. So yeah, I think there's a lot of tools now though where you can think of certain ideas, like obviously AI tools, stuff like that. Yeah, it's interesting, but I get that a lot. And I'm appreciative, like obviously, of the name too, and I think for sure, I think people definitely like it, so it sticks well. And also, I think it's just good to have a short name too, like as much as possible. Yeah,
It's really great and like really unique. It's just like really catching and like it's a really great name. And you said you did have some background in
thank you.
marketing. How important do you think is a company name in terms of branding, especially now, like you said it yourself, there's like oversaturation and it's hard to find something that's like unique and true to the core of like what you're trying to build. How important is like a company name really for a business?
I think it's very important, and I think it's just in terms of like how many syllables it could be, or even just like what it really means or the meaning behind it. So I think what I appreciate a lot is like when there's meaning behind certain names, or like if there's a certain synonym or just a different word that's used, that's great. But overall, I'm more in the realm of like where, especially in terms of like just words and like even logos that are made for them. Nowadays, a lot of business names or business logos are made very simple, like just text and things like that. I think that's good, but I don't think that's like as authentic, and it's just too simplified, and it could be very ambiguous. Like a certain name, like I don't know, like Halo, it could just be like a business name for like a medicinal company or pharma company, or it could be like a clothing brand. So it's just like I think you have to make it, in my opinion, make it relevant to your business. Really put some meaning behind it, make it authentic, and then obviously work with designers, even such as ourselves, to help really bring it to life. And for sure, I think definitely the naming of the business is very important.
Do you share these like insights with like, because I know you work from like a business to business operation.
Yeah.
So do you give these like insights? Because like sometimes if you have like clients who come up to you and they have these like really weird names, you just like go with it. Do you give them a little bit of like insight or just like advice? You just like go with it, whatever they want to name their company.
Yeah, for sure. That's a great question. So definitely, we will give suggestions. Like we work with our, I call them business partners basically, but really like our clients. Like we will work with them in a collaborative basis. So we won't like just say, okay, yes, this is the name, and we're gonna go do this. You want us to design it this way? We also want to give our suggestions, because over the years, like we've learned so many different ways of it. And for example, if the domain's not available on GoDaddy or a domain hosting service, we'll give those suggestions and ways around it. And then for sure, like even from a designing standpoint, just aside from the strategy, even when it uncovers in the design, like we will give certain recommendations or feedback, like, no, we did this because of this, or we think you should keep an element of this for reason A, B, C.
So, in terms of like giving advice to young entrepreneurs out there, would you share like a big challenge that you personally faced when you were starting WebSharks?
I think a big part of it, since I started the business really young, was I noticed a lot in terms of like people not trusting you when you're at a younger age, or things like that. I think for sure the number one part is like building the experience and portfolio. And I noticed it didn't matter, like even when I got into my early 20s, once we built a relationship with so many clientele or businesses or even references, that helped us secure clients much more confidently. So I think it's just all about getting the experience. And if people are struggling with that with their businesses, it could be at a reduced rate or subsidized. So that way you're still able to secure clientele, and you're making an affordable rate for whoever it is. And you're building that portfolio, because I know for people at times, like they could demand a lot at once, like if you're starting a business. And I just think you need to kind of prove yourself and really show like you're able to execute, and people feel that much more comfortable. And that's a big part that I noticed just over the years. Like we used to charge a much different price, and obviously pricing has changed just a lot for inflationary reasons over the last 15 years. So I think in general, though, especially in a service-based business, really being able to execute and show you're able to execute at an excellent level and superior, that'll really help your business grow that much more.
I absolutely see how it's like hard to, build that authority as a young person starting your business. But what about sustaining the company? What have been the challenges since then? Like since you've grown up and now you do have this authority in the industry and now you do have these clientele. What was the hardest part of sustaining that success?
That's a great question. I think the biggest part is in terms of obviously it's two pronged. I think retaining your existing clientele, so making sure they're happy, making sure to check in and making sure you're able to continue offering value to them. And that's done in many ways in terms of like how at WebSharx, like we help our clients manage their websites. We don't just ask them to kind of come to us and we build them a website and say bye to them. We help in terms of like the overall maintenance and hosting their website. So managing them on a daily or weekly basis. And aside from that, it's also just being able to understand how to bring in new clientele and really grow the business. And that evolves over many different ways. For example, like today we're doing a podcast. This wouldn't exist and so kind of so long ago. And aside from that, just even marketing in many ways and seeing where you can reach your needs based customers and consumers. And I think that's very important for all types of industries.
So, as a business to business company, would you say it's harder or easier to deal with clients as an organization or as individuals?
Yeah, I think each have their pros and cons. I think for business to business, like there's less overall, I guess, number of customers versus like the number of consumers in a B2C business. But for sure, I think regardless of the fact, I think all customers or consumers need to be treated in terms of very importantly. And that really helps really build that credibility and value over time.
And are there specific like marketing tactics that are different if you're marketing to an organization or to individual consumers?
For sure. And that's what we recommend with our clients that we work with as well. And a lot of their businesses are B2B or they could be B2C. And for example, in B2B, we could recommend certain tools such as LinkedIn advertising or Google Ads, which is obviously a very popular one. But in terms of, especially with consumers, we could go along with that social approach, especially for product-based businesses. So I think it definitely varies, but for sure, it's definitely very different, I think, amongst the two industries.
So, I want to ask something a little about you as a business
For
owner.
sure.
Like, how do you stay motivated or what keeps you motivated?
For sure. I think for me, I have a very like competitive background and I've always been into kind of sports and things like that. So because of that, I've always just thrived in a competitive environment. And I think it's just continuing to see how much further you can go. And it's not about being kind of looking too large in terms of a size of a prize or anything. I think it's just competing as much as you can in your industry, growing where possible. And I think also just reaching people. I think the number one part in terms of when I started the business is making sure businesses can transform their business from offline to online. And that's a big part in terms of what really keeps me motivated, where I see a business that just started up. I really love seeing their digital presence come around. And even if we haven't built it, even just a local restaurant just around us, I'm very curious to see how they're starting their marketing, or have they gotten a website done yet, and what are some of their destinations, and how have they been kind of reaching their consumers. All those things, they continue to keep me motivated, and I love working in all types of different industries. There's just, we might think in like a very B2B, like a packaging automation company for a few days, and then we may think from a restaurant's perspective. So I think those aspects, they continue to keep me and the team motivated. We work on all types of different projects, and we're very grateful for that.
How important is it to bring offline businesses online? Is it something you think all industries like have to do? Is it something like a prerequisite for businesses today?
Great question. I think yes, for sure. I think in terms of like being a prerequisite, it really has become one since 2020, since what we've seen with the pandemic, and that really accelerated that process. Aside from that, though, I think a big part of it is really in terms of like businesses that are offline or just businesses that have been around like 30, 40, 50 years and they have an outdated kind of online experience. the generations are changing and they're evolving, especially with kind of like aging populations, things like that. A lot of different people are taking different ownership. So because of that, I think when you're thinking about who you're trying to reach and how you can sustain your business in the long term, you definitely need to have a great online presence. People need to be able to find you. And I think that's very important.
Taking your business online and just like digital marketing and online marketing has like changed the way businesses work these days. Like everything is just online. Like
Yeah.
it's just so much easier to operate even without like a physical store or like a physical office. Like it's insane what changed over the years. So like business wise, like how do you adapt to these changes or like changes within the industry or the market? How do you stay on top of like the game?
I think it's just being open to and accepting change. A big part of it is like, okay, how can we use certain tools to help us work that much faster? Especially being in our business, we're a service-based business, and a big part of and certain challenges that can come up in the future are like things like AI or just automation. But for us being in service, I think it's just in terms of value offering you have with businesses and just clients you work with. And as long as you can really convey that value, I think you'll continue to sustain yourself as a business. I think in terms of adapting within our industry, I think it's just continuing to stay agile, especially like certain ways like websites are developed or even certain marketing tools. Like we're not shy to try TikTok, things like that. And I think just being open to these different channels and not really staying that silo way. And yes, this is the way we're going to do it, and it's going to continue to be this way for the next 5, 10 years. No, there's definitely ways that are evolving, and I think we want to use those as an end. And what I mean those in terms of tools instead of being an or. And I think that really helps us grow.
A lot of people like something or like a challenge they have that stops them from like becoming a business owner or starting that idea is that they're scared that there's oversaturation in many business industries. What would you say to these people? And do you believe it's still worthwhile to pursue a business idea despite having many competitors?
Think it varies. Like it depends on, I think that's where a lot of the research comes in. So nowadays, a lot of things like Google Trends are available or Google Keywords Planning and just understanding like how effective like certain searches are. And then aside from that, I think just also doing simple searches like on your own in terms of seeing, okay, like how many businesses are showing up in the Toronto area that are nail salons or whatever it could be. So I think that's a big part of it. And I think there's no way in terms of like shying away from like testing or pre-launch. Like there's certain ways like you can set up landing pages and just to get people's interest, and that's where I think where you can prototype your business. So for sure there's a lot of tools readily available, and I think it's just understanding the industry size of the prize. And for sure if there's oversaturation, I think it can be difficult to enter. I wouldn't say it's not possible, but
Mhm.
I think you can think about it in certain ways, like how can you reach people effectively maybe in a certain part of Canada, and then how can you grow that further and reinvest your business for any type of industry. Yeah.
So, keeping it in line with like more advice for people out there who want to start their own business ideas, what would you say are the top traits of a successful entrepreneur?
At least what I've learned over the years, and it's not like I have all of these, but I think it's just in terms of like what I see that works really well is just adaptability, number one. So being able to change on the fly. There's certain things like that can come up in your kind of perfect day, and there's never like a perfect day because things just change so rapidly. And I think it's just being able to adapt and overcome challenges. That's the biggest part that I've noticed. And really being able to kind of turn a no into a yes and being not afraid to tackle that. Aside from that, I think a big part of it is just also understanding your client or customer or consumer. So that just really means being able to resonate with them kind of from an emotional standpoint, understand why they might be coming to you for any product or service needs. And I think based on that, having that emotional intelligence, it'll really help drive that much further. And then finally, I think being able to delegate. So a big part of that is a leadership skill in terms of delegation. And one person can't do everything. And there's honestly a finite amount of time in a day. And in terms of getting a healthy amount of sleep, there's even less hours. So given that, I think being able to delegate and make sure you're able to collaborate and work effectively, and really being able to kind of teach your team members or really inspire them, I think that's a big part of it and helps you become an effective leader.
Thank you. That really makes sense. And absolutely,
Yeah.
it takes a really special person to know that you can't do everything your own, and if you want to succeed, you have to rely on some people and trust other people to
Yeah.
see your vision and help you achieve that. So on the flip side, what would you say are the features that a business should have for it to be called successful?
In terms of the features of what a business could have, I think it's just I think people may focus a lot on like revenue, things like that. For me, I think it's just having like happy clientele and growing clientele. So as long as you're having customers that are just very happy in terms of like their needs are being met, I think that's key, and that itself will help grow exponentially. Whether that be you're looking for new customers or referrals, etc. That's really how we've grown WebSharks to where it is now, and for sure, I think that's a big part of the success, and it's just also making sure your service or product offerings are that great in terms of value. So making sure that they're made effectively to a high level, and that it's just not being done just like bare bones to just compete with a certain industry.
Yeah, you know what? A lot of people would probably say that if they reach a certain revenue point, then that's success for them. But I think it is really nice
Exactly.
that as long as you provide that unique value proposition that you set your goal to become and give those to your clients. And like you said a while ago, you don't just build websites and then leave them to it. You stay with them and you help
Yeah,
nurture them and you nurture your clientele. And I think that's a really great trait, and that really, factors into the success that you've had as an entrepreneur. For my next question, and this you can answer it in a business way or like personal way, but what does success
for
look
sure.
like to you?
I think in terms of success, yeah, I think it's where you're finding yourself like you're obviously continuing like to manage like your clientele effectively, and I think the biggest part for that is like you're seeing your customer base very happy, your clients happy, and that they're also growing with you as well, especially being in business to business. If you're offering a service to other businesses, you want to make sure that's working for them, and that's a big part for us. We go as far as making sure our other clients, I mean, our clients are getting effective inquiries for the marketing campaigns we run, or they're having a great experience by people visiting their website. We'll check in with our clients after their website is launched and we'll hear great feedback like, yes, so on so visited the website and they were really happy with the experience. So these kinds of experiences for us really help us feel that successful from a business standpoint and even personal. I think for sure it's a big achievement when we feel that, and I think I get happy once others are also happy in terms of the business and what we do. So I think that's success for me.
Lately, or if you can recall like an instance, was there like any major setbacks that WebSharks had to overcome, and how did you overcome them?
I think the biggest over the last couple of years is obviously the pandemic, but the big challenge for us is being in kind of Ontario or in Canada. There were a lot of regulations, obviously that kept businesses closed and things like that. So for us, and even for businesses we help in the U.S. In terms of their digital campaigns, a difficult part was just really understanding. Okay, what are certain time periods we should be online in terms of advertising? um in terms of understanding like advertising, like Google ads, you can spend a finite amount and Google ads will only be spent if certain clicks or impressions are coming in, whereas on social media, if you have a budget allocated, it'll be fully spent regardless. So for us, it was making sure we're spending effectively and efficiently so we're not just wasting budget for our clients. And that's a big part of it. So I think that was kind of one of the biggest challenges, because certain months were offline or online, and we just wanted to make sure we were working effectively. And the last thing we wanted to do was make sure any budgets were wasted or anything, just because a business couldn't operate. So that was tricky, but we're very grateful that we can look back past that, and since 2022. So that's been great. And I think aside from that, it's just also like in terms of marketing, like certain things will click and at certain times like they will not click at all. So it's just being able to adapt again, right? It's just understanding like, okay, this isn't working for us. We need to think differently. And we take that step back at times, like even towards the end of the year, we have certain like year-end kind of strategy sessions with a lot of the franchises that we work with. And that's become very helpful for us, because being very close to the tactics, because a lot of our work is very execution based. We want to take a step back and really understand, okay, is this strategy working well? And once again, it's going back to collaborate with that business.
So, what would you say or have been like the most proudest moment you've had about WebSharks? Like, if you were to tell someone that you didn't know about your business, what are you most proud of about WebSharks?
I think what was great, just kind of like a full circle experience, was a few years ago going back to university and doing a bit of this like case competition for WebSharx, and it just kind of helped me take a step back because it's just kind of going back full circle. Like I've worked hard over the years and going into school and getting a bachelor's degree, things like that. And once kind of like being able to share my experience back, that was very, I think, reassuring for me. That kind of looked like more success for me and kind of a milestone. I think aside from that, in terms of just ongoing things we do, it's just certain achievements like, okay, what are we seeing in terms of like conversion rates on campaigns or things like that. That's what really helps me kind of sleep better at night, knowing really our businesses are growing, that we're working with. So yeah, that's a big part for me. Yeah.
Also, you are a professional in taking offline businesses online. For entrepreneurs out there that are listening to us today, what advice would you give them they should definitely implement in, especially in today's digital age?
I think biggest part is people get really tied up in terms of like how they could be branded or certain design or certain elements. And I think being online now, there's a lot of just comparisons that come into play because you can see so many different businesses and the competition you're going up against. I think it's just being obviously authentic as much as possible, like really let out your passion and bring it in your business. And yeah, I'd say everything's usually a work in progress. Like a website, I always tell our clients, like it's never like really 100% complete because there's certain changes that will come down the road and then things will just evolve, like just certain design elements or certain tech improvements that could come in that we will leverage. So keeping all of that in mind, nothing is really forever timeless. Once again, it's just the adapting to the change and also like just not waiting for that perfect moment. It's like you can take that leap now. You can really try things, and it's not about how you look in front of others. It's just really what matters most to you. This is your business, and don't be afraid to start it.
I really like what you said about authenticity because, like, today I feel like some people will just like try something or like do a trend just because it works for other people and not just because it works for other
Yeah,
businesses means it works for you. And then if you're not authentic, then you lose sight of like your goals. And it's like, what are you really even like doing this for? You can't just
exactly.
like
Yeah,
ride on the ideas of others and like try something just because it looks successful. You don't really know how they got there, like what success looked like to them or what took them there. So I think it's all about
yeah,
just taking your own road. Like you said, there's no perfect time. Just take that leap, learning as you
exactly. Yeah,
go. So what does the
exactly.
future of WebSharks look like?
For sure, that's a great question. In terms of the future, I think for us is where we're looking to reach different markets. We're a Google partner in terms of digital marketing, so that's worked really great for us. We manage plenty of clients from a Google ad standpoint, even Facebook ads and various advertising tools. But aside from that, I think we've done well in terms of the Canadian landscape and also have gotten into the US landscape. So we're looking to continuously grow there, where we could reach more businesses throughout North America or even across the world. And then also just continuing to expand. So for sure, if there are any interested kind of WordPress or design or WordPress developers or just even general designers, we're always open to adding to our team. So for sure, I think that's a big part for us. Doing so, we want to make sure we're readily equipped. And a big part that things and businesses appreciate is really our client responsiveness. So continuing to really zone in on that, and making sure we're keeping our existing business very happy.
So, to keep up and stay successful and relevant in the face of industry and market changes, what are your plans to elevate your company's strategies in terms of marketing, operations, and social media?
Just really staying up to date kind of with the latest, like for example, like we're doing our podcast today, things like that. So I think just really speaking to people on different channels and being able to reach them effectively. And then from an operational standpoint, I think it's just continuing to adapt to certain tools, making sure we're using them effectively, whether it be automation tools or whatever it may be. I think a big part for us though is we want to continue to just stay authentic. We do everything custom, and our designs and development and our copy, things like that. So because of that, we're going to continue to narrow in there, and really give the best value offering we can.
When you were starting, did you like have a mentor that had an impact to you as an entrepreneur or for inspiring entrepreneurs? Is having a mentor important? How does one even find a mentor?
I know it's very tricky. I think for me personally, it's just I've had a lot of business owners around me, like just growing up in my family. So that was really helpful. But a big part was also my brother as well, who also managed and owned a business for many years and still does. That was really helpful for me to understand, okay, certain parts like I don't think of like operationally or financially or certain things. And that really helps. And I think it's best because it's better not to work in a silo. Like it's good to really knock ideas back and forth with other people, whether that might be friends, family, or just even new team members that you're looking at. So I think once again, like for sure, people can get caught up in like their own mind and thoughts, and just talking to other people about it, it helps you really think differently as well.
I hear a lot from other people that this varies from person to person. So I wanted to get your opinion, but they say never start a business with your friends or your family. What do you think about that?
Yeah, for sure. I think that's very interesting. Like in general, I think whatever is natural, like that can come out, that's great. I think it's just once again, like if you feel like you know certain friends or family members that have certain tools, for example, certain competencies that really work well with you, I think it'll be a successful equation. If it's kind of being like a business force, like maybe not as much, but for sure, I wouldn't say like yes or no completely. I think it depends on like each situation.
Absolutely. It varies depending. Some people just work
Hmm.
well together.
Yeah,
And I mean, who else better to work with than friends and
exactly.
family that you
Yeah,
trust?
friends and family. Yeah,
We've talked about stuff that you've done to be successful. What are things in hindsight that you would not do if you were to go back, or would you not even change it?
yeah. I know. I know. I guess in general, like in hindsight, yeah. I think it honestly varies. Like there's always certain ways you think about, like why didn't I start this earlier, or for example, like optimizing your business online. Why didn't I do ABC? So a lot of things like I think about or even tell others is making sure like, okay, can you get your business online earlier, or if there's like, for example, improving your search engine optimization, and there's things like that just take a long time, and those are certain things like I think about and wish I did kind of earlier on and learn those certain tactics. But for sure, being Google partners now is we really understand obviously the value of that over the last several years. And yeah, I think that's a big part. And for sure, like you can't really get caught up too much in the past. I think for sure making sure like you're still actioning certain things like you wish you would have done. I think it's great to finally start that somewhere.
Since you said earlier you do operate online, do you find it hard to find that like work-life balance, or what do you do to achieve that?
I think it's just prioritizing, right? So I know, like I said, like it's bad to look at my phone right away in the morning, but a big part is just aside from that is really understanding priority, like what needs like your attention more so in a certain time frame. So that's what I've been able to kind of learn over time. And then, for example, there's certain times you need to make time for family, and really making sure you have things on like on your calendar. So I put everything on my calendar, and if there's any conflicts, I understand, okay, what needs higher priority if I can't delegate that differently. So for sure, that's something to think about.
Because you're a business owner, obviously finding that perfect team that, like I said earlier, that helps you towards your vision, helps you, take everything into fruition. What are the things that you look for when you're looking for a person to join your team?
For sure, I think a big part is just the passion. It's kind of the day to day basis where, just like what I tell my clientele, is we don't work only for them, it's we work with them. And a big part is, especially for any subordinates or just people joining our team, employees or whatever it may be, we want them to also think in the same realm of working with us versus for us, right? And I think that's where a lot of people will learn that leadership ability over time. That's where it really proves to be effective. So I think that's what's really important for me.
To our viewers, whether they're starting their entrepreneurial journey or they're already seasoned business pros, what would you like to share with them or give a little insight or just advice, maybe?
Yeah, for sure. I think once again, kind of being able to adapt. I think to certain changes that do come across, and I think it's just continuing to have that fight. It's just especially being a business owner, it can be very tough. Like your no comes up a lot in many different ways, or different parts of the business. So I think continuing to zone into that and being able to overcome those challenges, and then Also, just being able to rely on your team to help you grow that much further and kind of more like-minded individuals that you're working with. I think that just helps you really reach your goals more effectively as a business and just helps you grow personally as well.
I really like what you said there. Like, when starting a business or when operating your own business, you're gonna hear the word no a lot. So how do you overcome that when you're always like, does it get to a point where you're always just like, you always hear the word no, you're always, it doesn't go your way all the time? Like, how do you go around that? How do you look at that in a positive outcome and, still go through with your vision?
Yeah, for sure. And I think no can come up, especially in our business. Like we're in design and development and being a digital agency, there's certain proposals or business that we're trying to reach. And what happens at times is we may get rejected by a client once in a while. And that's normal. It's just because we're in a very competitive industry as well. So I think just understanding, okay, what could we have done better? Is there a certain service offering that wasn't made clear? Or what needs to be more competitive in terms of what we're offering. So I think just asking even like your consumers or customers like for that constructive feedback, it'll just help you grow that much further because that's at the end of the day who you're trying to reach, those need-based customers and consumers, and being able to know if something is really resonating well or working well, that'll help you reach them much more effectively next time.
Thank you for that. And this is already our last
Okay,
question that I'd love to ask each guest. So, with where you are and your
for sure.
business, give me a word that describes your current vibe.
For sure. So current vibe, I'd say, let's see.
If the word is a bit
Yeah.
too hard, it could be a little phrase.
I think right now a big part that's coming up is just efficient budgeting and marketing. A big part for us right now is and always has been is getting a great digital marketing mix is very important. So being able to reach customers or clientele effectively, like in needs based digital marketing avenues, that's very important. And then on the other side, there's ways to reach more kind of wide awareness and reach tools. So we really find a great balance for that. I think kind of with Black Friday and the holidays coming up, and just obviously with the economy where it is right now due to inflationary reasons, we really recommend really effective marketing tools where people can spend efficiently. And for us, it's less so like we want to sign you up for like A to Z campaigns where you could just spend absurd amounts of money and the return might not be as great. We've built the experience over the time to really zone in and tell customers and clients effectively like this is where you need to be and this is how we're going to hold ourselves accountable to understand okay what businesses are growing with that and how well we're converting. So that's a big part. I think it's just being able to, I guess overall, to maybe rephrase that, is really just reach businesses or clientele effectively and efficiently.
I love that. Thank you. And I'm so excited to see
Yeah,
WebShark expand in the future. Because of all these like wonderful advice you've given, we might have some young entrepreneurs or already like business owners out there who do want to take their business from offline to online. So how will these people reach you?
for sure. You can definitely reach us at websharx.ca. So that's WEBSHARX.ca. And that's in X, not KS for sharks. But other than that, for sure, we're definitely readily available. You can check out kind of who and what we've worked on over the years, and definitely check out our Facebook, Instagram, all that sorts of stuff. And you can definitely find me on LinkedIn. Would love to connect.
I will leave all of the links in our description so that people know how to reach you. From the team at The Right Direction, we want to thank you so much for taking the time to grace our podcast and share your wisdom with our listeners. And thank you to everyone who listened to us today. This has been your host, Patricia. And remember, for all your professional business and technical writing needs, there's only one way to go, and it's with The Right Direction. See you guys soon.